Well, welcome on behalf of the British Centre for the British-Turkish Understanding. This webinar, it will be also live streamed on the Centre's Facebook page as well as Al Jazeera. We've gathered online this evening to reflect on the 15th of July failed coup in Turkey. And that was, you will recall, 5 years ago. And we're very privileged this evening to have Sir Alan Duncan, whom many of us will remember hit the news headlines by the fact that within a few days of the coup, he was on a plane to Ankara. And many people appreciated that act of solidarity. We're also delighted to welcome the current Turkish ambassador in London, Umit Yalcin, who for many years has been centre to the foreign policy in Turkey, and of course the chairman of the Centre for British-Turkish Understanding, Abdurrahim Boynukalin, will welcome us. The Centre really was set up a few years ago to promote better understanding, both at a cultural, social and political level. And I must say, I'm happy to serve on the board of the Centre, and I think it's a real opportunity for us to get to the bottom of a lot of the issues that are sometimes creating misunderstanding and controversy. With that said, I would like now to turn to Abdurrahim. As I said, he's chairman of the Centre, but also chairman of the AK party in the UK, former minister, and also member of parliament. Abdurrahim.
Thank you, dear Oliver. Thank you once again for moderating this special webinar for CBTU. Your help and continuous guidance as an advisor to the CBTU is very much appreciated as always. At the outset, allow me to thank and welcome His Excellency Ambassador Umit Yalcin and Sir Alan Duncan. We know both lead very busy schedules, especially today. We're grateful for your time today, and we look forward listening to your precious thoughts and insights on the failed coup attempt in Turkey. On that fateful 15th of July, Turks opened their eyes to a normal sunny summer's day in our beautiful country. Of course, there were some rumors spreading that the Gülenist terrorist organization, FETÖ, was planning an attack on our nation, on our people, and on our cherished democracy. Despite our misgivings about this group, no one in Turkey ever imagined that FETÖ would go that far to attack fellow Turks and our institutions. Let me remind our viewers of that after the statement was issued in the public broadcast TRT, some of the terrorists used our air forces and F-16 fighter jets to create sonic booms to frighten people on the streets and in their homes. They resorted to bombing the Turkish Parliament building whilst people were inside, our MPs were inside. They attacked the president's residency, as well as several buildings which belongs to security forces, and shot at civilians indiscriminately. The iconic Bosphorus Bridge was also a target of these criminals. Personally, and for those who experienced this coup attempt, it was like a scene from a horror movie, which no one expects to live through in life. The plotters tried to undo our democracy and overthrow the elected governments. But thanks to the strong leadership of the government and the resilience of ordinary people, the coup was foiled and the plotters were humiliated. The plotters forgot that the citizens of this great nation had experienced such coup attempts in the past, and they were not going to let this one off easily. In the past, such coups resulted in the execution of a sitting prime minister and two ministers in 1960. This time with President Erdogan's decisive leadership and call to action, millions of people poured into the streets to defend Turkey, to defend democracy and the rule of law. This brave standoff show solidarity came at the cost of 251 martyrs and 553 severely injured. To the fallen and the survivors of the coup, we owe them our deepest respect and appreciation. This resilience of the people also inspired many people around the world to show how people can resist the might of a military with their bare hands. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Abdurrahim, thank you so much, and thank you for organizing this time to allow us to reflect on both how the coup came into existence, we might say, how is it orchestrated, who was behind it, and above all, what lessons are to be learned from it. Now, I think those are the objectives of our webinar this evening. Sir Alan, without more delay, I would like to turn to you. As I said, people greatly admired your spontaneous response, that you were willing to go when in real time, as it were, and you didn't wait to make some statement, but you were there reassuring the parliamentarians and government that the outside world was standing behind them. So, Sir Alan, if you would like to start, then we're going to have a slight variation, because I think it would be good to ask the ambassador to enter into discussion with you, and then we will ask the ambassador to give his own reflections, and hopefully then we will have time to have some questions and answers before we conclude our webinar. Thank you. Sir Alan.
Well, Oliver, thank you very much. And indeed, thank you to everybody who's decided to listen and watch today, because I think this 5th anniversary of the attempted coup marks a very important moment in history, not just for Turkey, but actually for the wider interests of democracy. And for me, as a British politician, the events are still very, very vivid and ingrained in my thinking about how important an event it was, and in a way, how privileged I was to be able to be a part of the events that took place so soon after the attempted coup. It doesn't seem like 5 years ago. It all seems to have gone so quickly. But in those 5 years, of course, much has happened. But at the time, actually, the UK government was going through some massive changes. We'd had our referendum on the European Union. It did not go the way the government wanted. David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister, and we had to pick a new Prime Minister. And it was pretty well the day before, or the day of the coup, that Theresa May became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And I was lucky enough to be picked by her as Foreign Minister responsible for Turkey. And on that very day, we saw in the news the unfolding events that were going on in Ankara and elsewhere, of course, which very soon were clearly the events of an attempted coup d'etat. So this was big news on my very first day as a minister. And I think there is one very, very important lesson in life for any politician who believes in democracy. It is that whatever the difference is between people, the way to solve it is not through guns and bombs and an attempted coup. You do it through arguments and elections, maybe some demonstrations, but not an attempted coup. So when it was clear that so much had been threatened by the coup attempt, I decided that my first action as a minister would be to get on a plane. I didn't really ask the Prime Minister, I just did it. And I wanted to fly to Ankara to express my firm solidarity and that of Her Majesty's government in the UK with the government of the day and, crucially, the people of Turkey. And I have to say, I was very shocked and it was quite emotional when I turned up. I mean, for one parliamentarian to walk into someone else's parliament and see a pile of rubble where a bomb had been dropped while Parliament was sitting is a very, very sobering and indeed almost frightening sort of thing to see. We have memories of the United Kingdom Parliament being bombed in the Second World War, and that is still vivid in our memory. And here it was happening a mere 5 years ago in Turkey. I met the politicians, Binali Yildirim and others, and the Speaker of the Parliament, who were clearly traumatized by events. And indeed, many politicians, I subsequently learnt, had had a very narrow escape from the attackers who had perpetrated this attempted coup. And I had very quickly to try and explain to people in the UK quite what this meant. Because some people were saying, oh, it was stage managed, it wasn't really very serious. And I was able to explain, because I had been able to see it for myself, that it was the equivalent, had it happened in London, of the British Army driving tanks over Westminster Bridge and killing civilians, of bombs being dropped on Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament while the members of Parliament were inside there, of the coup perpetrators attempting to kill the Prime Minister and the Queen, and for all of these events at quite significant sort of cost in terms of human life being carried out on the streets of a country that really so close to the UK in terms of affection and alliance. It was serious. And therefore, it was very important to make the point that we, as the UK, fully supported Turkey in its hour of trauma. And I hope that that lasts as something that is a clear statement between the UK and Turkey of what we understood this event to be. So ever since, I have worked very closely with fellow politicians and indeed I've developed my affection for and specialism in Turkey, which perhaps is one of the happy things in my life that has come out of this very unhappy and unacceptable incident. So I hope that people will look back 5 years later and not just think it was a small event. It was not. It went to the very heart of the legitimacy of government in Turkey. And let's just think what would have happened if it had worked. It would have caused turmoil. And it would have meant that an illegitimate, effectively dictatorship would have come to the country on the back of guns and bombs and bullets. That is not acceptable. So 5 years later, I extend once again my good wishes to all the people of Turkey. And I hope that we can not forget the bravery of so many of the citizens who actually stood up to these threats and actually were heroes in the cause of the government, the legitimate government of the day. So we look back for 5 years. I think we can celebrate not that it happened, but that it did not succeed. And I hope that no coup attempts ever of this sort can succeed against a government that is properly trying to do its best for its country. So 5 years on, I look forward when all the COVID restrictions are finished to being able to visit again properly and renew the many friendships I've made on the back of the unfortunate incident that once again we condemn, but we're pleased did not succeed. Thank you. On mute.
I was hoping we'd get through without having to be told unmute. But Ambassador, I think you were in Ankara at the time, and I just wonder if you could just quickly say a word on the impact of Sir Alan's action to you in the Foreign Ministry and also in Parliament. And then if we can open up a discussion between you, that would be good.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you very much for your contribution to this webinar, and thank you for your time, because I know that as the director of forward thinking, you and your team are always busy and making invaluable contributions for the Middle Eastern issues in your endeavors within the framework of forward thinking. And I, for many years, I've been following and time to time exchanging and trying to support the efforts and activities of forward thinking, especially in Middle Eastern issues. And also, I would like to thank the Center for British-Turkish Understanding, CBTU, and Abdurrahim, and the British-Turkish Association for organizing this webinar on the 5th anniversary of the July 15th failed coup attempt in Turkey. As two successful organizations representing Turkish community in the UK, we value CBTU's and BTA's contribution on promoting understanding between the UK and Turkey. I also would like to extend my sincere thanks to Sir Alan Duncan, who has honored us with his presence today. His observations and reflections about the 15th July coup attempt have utmost importance. As he stated in 2016, Sir Alan Duncan, as the UK's Europe Minister, went to Turkey in less than a week's time of the heinous attempt. He became the first high-level politician from Europe to visit us to express his condolences, showing the UK's strong support. It meant a lot for our government and the Turkish people. The UK government has unreservedly condemned the failed attempt to overthrow the democratically elected government of Turkey and stood firmly in support of Turkish democracy. And both then Prime Minister May and then Foreign Secretary Johnson spoke to President Erdogan and Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, respectively, on the day after the attempted coup. We are most grateful for the explicit support and solidarity of the UK. While most of our allies and friends in Europe were rather slow in condemning this explicit attack on Turkish democracy and disregarded the epic struggle of the Turkish nation to preserve it, the UK has displayed unwavering support. By all means, the UK has demonstrated that a friend in need is a friend indeed. And as Oliver reminded, I was in Ankara as acting Undersecretary of the Foreign Ministry that time. And I remember also Minister Duncan's immediate visit to Turkey. There was a huge sympathy and support to Sir Alan Duncan from our media and public opinion. And it was an amazing moment for our friendship. I would like to go on talking on failed coup attempt and our bilateral relations, but before taking my opportunity to talk some more, first, I would like to ask a question to Sir Alan about two things. One, during his visit, during your visit, Alan, or in the aftermath of your visit, how do you evaluate the reaction of Turkish public opinion, Turkish people to your visit, to your support, to your statements? against that coup attempt? And the second question, maybe we can use this opportunity to listen to your valuable assessment of Turkish-UK relationship and cooperation, because your contribution to our cooperation was not only your visit or statement in the aftermath of that failed coup attempt, but also you made a contribution in many different fields of Turkish-UK relationship, from trade, business, defense, industry, and regional issues, and fighting against terrorism. And maybe you can share some of your opinions with us for the Turkish-UK relationship and cooperation with this opportunity. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And of course, I will go on saying something about that failed coup attempt later. Thank you.
Well, Ambassador, thank you. I have to say, what has surprised me is what an impact it did make in terms of Turkish opinion. And it is, I think, because nobody else did decide to visit quickly, and they were suspicious about the genuine nature of the coup, which is, I think, almost insulting. This was a real coup attempt, and it was very frightening. For me, it was a moral moment where it was very important to make a stand for the people against violence of this sort, more than violence, against an armed attempt to replace the government and the apparatus of government. And I suppose what's taken me aback is I've discovered I seem to be more popular in Turkey than I am in my own country, which is sometimes what happens to a foreign minister and a politician. But it means that it did touch a nerve. And I was very touched by the emotions of people. I mean, this was not an event that just happened over 12 hours or whatever, and then was okay, it was over. No, people were traumatized. They were shocked. They felt that this had gone to the very heart of the security of their life, actually. And it was challenging many things that they take for granted. I mean, in the UK, we don't have the risk of a coup. And in Turkey, I know there's been that sort of latent fear that it could happen. And then suddenly it did. But what was, I think, so important, and a lot of it was through the amazing courage and resolution of civilian people or families, that it did not succeed, I hope will mean that no one will ever dare attempt to do it again. And it must mean that the proper processes of government and political debate are there forever in a proper, mature country, and that they can't be challenged by unacceptable, illegitimate force. It did, I hope, also launch a new phase of UK-Turkey relations. I hope it put things on a very good footing. There are some very, very important issues, of course, of trade. The whole customs union issue was very complicated over the 5 years since the coup attempt. The issue of Syria is still, unfortunately, bubbling on in a very nasty way. There are always issues of regional security. And of course, we did our utmost to be the honest force in the middle of an attempt to resolve the issue of Cyprus, which unfortunately was not successful. But people entered into this in good faith. And certainly we did, and I enjoyed working very, very closely with your own foreign minister and ministry. So there are always going to be very important issues with Turkey, and I think a growing number of issues. So I hope that the UK-Turkish relationship is continuing to develop in a fruitful way. And I hope that the recollection of what happened 5 years can always prove a good foundation to the trust that we have between our two countries.
Thanks, Ambassador, I think you need to
Yeah, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Oliver. Also, I would like to add something about the coup attempt from my perspective and from my recollections of that night. That attempt was not a typical military push. It recklessly aimed at toppling the Turkish democracy, elected legitimate parliament, and abolishing the constitutional order by the most cruel means, as Alan described. And it is impossible to find the appropriate words to describe the brutality and treachery that were displayed that night. The perpetrators of this hideous undertaking consisted of the disciples of Fethullah Gülen. They used lethal military hardware against innocent civilians who took to the streets to defend their democratic institutions. They attempted to assassinate the president and the prime minister, and we lost 251 Turkish citizens. Today, in the 5th anniversary of that attempt, we remember our martyrs with deepest respect. Turkish public from all walks of life have displayed extraordinary solidarity and took to the streets to defend democracy. July 15 was a trial of strength and perseverance of the Turkish democracy and the state. And because of that reason, it makes us proud to have passed that test, let me say. And all the political parties that time, both in government and in opposition, the unaffected elements of the armed forces, the police force, and the media stood up against those terrorists and perpetrators. During the last 5 years, much has been done to bring to surface the darker undertakings of FETÖ. Its criminal activities have been investigated in thousands of different court cases. The police and judiciary also had taken measures to discharge FETÖ members from their ranks. Confronting such a sinister and clandestine structure is not easy. However, we are determined to eradicate FETÖ. We are aspiring to do so while we also fight the most dangerous terrorist organizations simultaneously. That is Daesh, that is PKK. Let's not forget that the fact that FETÖ is not just a threat to Turkey, but also to more than many countries, more than 150 countries in the world, that is present through its schools, NGOs, lobbyists, media outlets, companies. We must take a clear-eyed look at this dark structure. It would be naive to believe that FETÖ is a benign civic education movement, as some circles try hard to portray. We are faced with a global enterprise with global aspirations of power and dominance. It would be a huge mischaracterization to think of Gülen merely as a peaceful Islamic scholar or preacher. What happened in Turkey 5 years ago is a stark reminder of what this terror organization may be capable of doing in other countries. Therefore, we would like to ask our friends and allies, including the UK, to be vigilant against FETÖ. We expect them not to provide safe haven to its members and show solidarity with Turkey against terrorism by extraditing FETÖ members to Turkey. Today, after 5 years of the heinous attempt, Turkey is stronger and more unified than ever. And we are committed to strengthening our democracy. Our economy is resilient and dynamic, especially after the long pandemic difficulties. Turkey is a reliable ally in its region and beyond, implementing a constructive and active policy that takes the initiative in resolving problems in the field, emphasizing the human dimension. It is currently the top refugee hosting country in the world with more than 4 million externally displaced people. And Turkey plays a leading role in conflict resolution and mediation. It also contributes to all initiatives aimed at establishing stability from Iraq to Afghanistan, from Caucasus to Balkans, from Black Sea to the Mediterranean and Africa. We will continue to contribute to the establishment of global peace, prosperity, and stability through principled foreign policy and collaboration with allies. We are also equally resolute to fight all enemies, including FETÖ, with determination. And of course, within this framework, as now today we are talking from London, our relations with the UK is very important and critical, not for only two countries' cooperation in business, trade, defense industry, fighting terrorism, or regional issues, but also as the two non-EU members but NATO members in the opposite side of European continent. Our relations and cooperation are more relevant than ever for the European continent's peace, stability, and prosperity, and also strengthening democracy and democratic institutions are very important common goal for all of us. And despite pandemic and many lockdowns in both countries, I am very pleased to be able to say that last year was very busy with high-level contacts between two countries. I mean, there were many talks between President and Prime Minister, and maybe 1/3 of our cabinets have talked with their counterparts, from Minister of Foreign Affairs to Minister of Interior, Minister of Defense to Minister of Trade, Minister of Tourism to Minister of Health. And also the most historic event between us was the signing of free trade agreement last December. And it created us a wonderful environment for the smooth continuation of our trades. And now, of course, our cooperation and exchanging of views for regional issues are important. I know that Sir Alan made amazing contribution for many regional issues, from Syria to the Middle Eastern issues, but especially Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus issue. And we were together in Kran, Montana, for instance. And I mean, his personal view and contribution, and the UK government's and UK approach to Turkey-related issues and our region's issues are really, really important, especially after Brexit, and maybe we should say post-pandemic era. And as the first person of visiting Turkey in the aftermath of coup attempt, we are attaching great importance to this relationship and to this historic memories of Sir Alan Duncan. Maybe we can also take some of Alan Duncan's view about the general perspective for coup attempts or coups throughout the world. In today's world, of course, democracy, human rights, all these things are important. In the same time, there are also security problems of the countries. The balance between security and democracy are always critical. But as he said very wisely, that we should be always against these kind of coup attempts throughout the world, to be fair and just for the other issues. Otherwise, if there is any double standard or hypocrisy, then there is no real friendship or no genuine constructive approach. Because of that reason, I really appreciate Sir Alan's views in the general perspective of coup attempts or coups in the world, or anti-democratic movements in the world, because when, as Sir Alan did, condemn these kind of attacks, then their constructive approaches or criticisms for any other issues are more well and more respectful, because there is no hypocrisy in those approaches. How do you see the general developments in the world, Sir Alan? Maybe instead of talking to Turkey in this part of the discussion, we can talk about the general anti-democratic coup attempts in the world.
Well, unfortunately, democracy is not having a very good run at the moment. There are many ways of looking at it and thinking that it's not as good as it should be. Across the world, some of the quality of leadership is not what it needs to be. I think that social media and 24-hour news has made a lot of democratic politicians just play to a populist tune rather than think deeply about policy. If you look around the world, of course, what's happened in Myanmar is very, very worrying. Again, that is a military takeover, not for the first time. I'm not sure democracy was at its best in the United States during the Trump era. I think a lot of quality in decision-making and in diplomacy was lacking. I have to say I was still a minister for part of it, and the State Department was very much undermined when I think it would have been better if it had been strengthened. So I think we should all appreciate the value of democracy. You know, as Churchill said, it might not be the best system, it's not perfect, but there's none better. What it does is it somehow always finds a way of keeping freedom and letting people express their point of view. And a military coup, however much it says it's releasing people from the regime that went before, never leads to proper freedom and democracy. It's not an acceptable route to addressing people's grievances and concerns. So I think the world is facing a slightly difficult period, I think, with the quality of its governments. And I hope that all politicians can realize that they actually come out of things better if they think of the long term and the longer term interests of their people, rather than just go for short term popularity, because then they'll find that it doesn't last. So that would be my little sort of moment, comment of wisdom for the seminar that we have today.
Sir Alan, thank you. We have a number of questions coming in, but what I'm going to propose is that we take a short break to look at the video prepared for this webinar tonight, which recalls the events of that evening 5 years ago.
On July 15, 2016, a faction within the Turkish military attempted to overthrow the government and failed. Here's what happened. At 10 p.m, things just didn't seem right in Istanbul and Ankara. People began to notice the sounds of jets and gunfire. Fighter jets were seen flying low. Soldiers blocked roads and bridges with tanks, preventing access to vehicles. People realized something was up. Soon after, military helicopters and jets began firing on people and targeting state buildings. Several government headquarters were bombed or raided by pushists, including media outlets which were forced off air. Everyone was impatiently anticipating an official statement by the government on what was happening. At about 11:30 p.m, the Turkish PM at the time, Binali Yildirim, announced a certain group within the military was attempting to overthrow the government.
Bu kalkışmayı yapanlar, bu çılgınlığı yapanlar, bu kanunsuz eylemin içerisinde olanlar da en ağır şekilde bedelini ödeyecek. Ve asla bu gibi kalkışmalara pabuç bırakmayacağız.
He called the attempt illegal and said those involved would be gravely punished. Meanwhile, the Turkish armed forces announced it didn't support the coup. At 12:13 a.m, pushists then used the country's public broadcaster TRT to announce martial law and a curfew, saying the political administration has lost all legitimacy and has been forced to withdraw. At 12:30 a.m, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan addressed Turkey on CNN Turk using FaceTime and urged everyone to take to the squares to protest the coup attempt, stating, "There is no power higher than the power of the people. Go to the squares and give them their answer." Throughout the night, the Selah was repeatedly called from mosques across Turkey, encouraging people to gather and resist the coup. Selah prayers are traditionally recited on Fridays and during funerals, but are also used to rally people. Turks across the country flocked to the streets and squares in defiance, and the pushist attacks only intensified. Pushists were now opening fire on demonstrators, running them over with tanks, and jets repeatedly bombed the Turkish parliament while lawmakers were inside. But despite the pushers' hostility, protesters were adamant on resisting and spent the night demonstrating. At 3:20 a.m, Erdogan finally lands in Istanbul. Police forces carried out several operations that night, and in a couple of hours, police began detaining pushers and taking back control of seized areas. The attempted coup was orchestrated by a terror group called FETÖ, whose leader is US-based Fethullah Gülen. Government and civilian action thwarted the coup attempt in just a couple of hours. But that night, 251 lives were lost, and more than 2,000 others were injured. The coup attempt was successfully resisted. Turks from all walks of life in the hundreds of thousands took to the squares to celebrate their democratic victory, each night for weeks on end.
A frightening reminder of the reality of what happened on that evening, and the sight of soldiers shooting on their own citizens underlines the importance of this webinar and the need to learn from what happened 5 years ago. Sir Alan, the first question to come in was for you, and it says, why was there a lukewarm response in condemning the coup by the UK and other European governments? I don't know if you would agree with the statement, a lukewarm response, or...
Well, I certainly don't agree with half of the question, because the UK government was anything but lukewarm. We condemned it very quickly and very strongly, and personified that condemnation by my visiting very, very soon, indeed as quickly as one possibly could in terms of getting on a plane and knowing you were going into somewhere adequately safe after the coup attempt. So the UK stood out as the one country that did condemn. I have to say, I think it was surprising that other EU countries did not. I've never quite understood why they thought that a country so close to Europe, indeed the border, if you like, between Europe and Asia, and a member of NATO, should not have its coup attempt condemned instantly and unequivocally, in an unqualified way. So I have never understood why the European Union countries did not, but please accept that the UK did. And that, I think, is much of what we've been discussing in this webinar today.
Thanks, Sir Alan. Ambassador, a question for you is, what would you say to critics who say that the Turkish government overreacted to the coup and arrested people indiscriminately?
Thank you, Oliver. First of all, I would like to add something to your question to Alan. I would like to add something, Sir Alan's answer, because I want to support his views about the UK reaction to coup attempts. I mean, immediately and very openly condemned the failed attempt, and also the European Minister as well, Duncan, immediately visited Turkey, and both, I mean, then Prime Minister Theresa May and then Foreign Secretary Johnson spoke to their counterparts, I mean, President Erdogan and Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, respectively, just after the attempted coup. Because of that reason, we are always underlining our gratitude to the UK for their open, frank, and firm approach against that coup attempt. As I said, I was at the foreign ministry that time, and I knew everything very clearly, that how we expected some of our friends and allies very clear, immediate statement and very brief statement against that coup attempt and supporting democracy and elected parliament. And I remember also the then ambassador of UK in Ankara, Richard Moore, supported democracy in Turkey and also helped to facilitate that Sir Alan Duncan's visit to Turkey. But as the acting Undersecretary of the Foreign Ministry at that time, I couldn't see any attempt from other countries, our allies, ally countries, ambassadors in Ankara that night and the other day or the other days. I think that was unforgettable time for Turkish public, and that wait and see policy of our friends impressed us negatively a lot, profoundly affected us a lot, because we understood that there was some calculation in their approach or wait and see policy after the failed coup attempt. And of course, it was not nice and good for allies and friends and partners if you cannot feel that support to your democracy, to your elected parliaments from your allies and partners. Then how come in the future, in different areas or in different issues, you can trust your partners and allies? And after that night, when that big and profound disappointment happened for us vis-a-vis our partners and allies in different areas, in different issues, when we received some criticism and reaction from our partners or allies, that Turkey is trying to engage with other countries or trying to make cooperation with this and that countries. And when they are trying to question or challenge our membership in NATO, of course, it is very sad that they are forgetting their cynical calculation that night and their double standard that night, and how that behavior, that approach created a profound disappointment in Turkish public opinion. And your question about the critics of the overreaction. Of course, I mean, it is not fair. It is not fair because, as I try to explain in my speech, I mean, that coup attempt was not a typical military push. I mean, it aimed at toppling the democracy, parliament, and they tried to assassinate president. I mean, and it was, as Sir Alan Duncan said, not a simple, ordinary or random movement. It was it created huge trauma, and fortunately, I mean, the strong will of the Turkish nation and Turkish president, that existential threat was thwarted. But of course, every country, every state in the world, just after that kind of brutal attempt, must take their own measures for their own security to protect their democracy, to protect their nation, and to not to repeat that kind of brutal nights for its nation. And because of that reason, the government took many measures for its own security. Of course, as I said, it is important to create that sensitive balance between security and democracy. And our government was very sensitive for that balance. And also this group, this Gülenist terrorist group, is very cynical group to perpetrate in many ministries and institutions as covered civil servants. And also it's normal for any state to try to clean its own institutions from that affiliates of that terrorist group. And because of that reason, I think that kind of criticism is not fair. And it's always easy to make that kind of assessments or critics when you are a little bit far from the real issues. But it is our job to explain our arguments, the reason of the measures, and also, as I said in my speech, I mean, Turkey now is more stronger than ever, and we will continue our struggle not only against Fethullah Gülen terrorist organizations, but as PKK, PYD, YPG, and Daesh, we should continue our struggle against all these organizations. Even looking at the map, the world map, and seeing Turkey's geostrategic location in the map should be enough to understand how Turkish borders and Turkish security are very critical, not for only Turks or Turkish people, but also for the whole European continent. Because of that reason, we are expecting, especially our European friends, to support Turkey's measures for its own security as their security. Thank you, Oliver.
Another quick question to you, Ambassador, is what help or support has been offered to the victims of the coup, the wounded and families of the dead?
Yes, state and government supported all unfortunate victims, I mean martyrs, and their families, and also there were more than 2,000 wounded people, and there were not only state support to all those people, but also there were many campaign among some NGOs or civil organizations. I mean, not only state governments or some relevant institutions, ministries or authorities, but also Turkish nation through their campaigns or civil organizations try to help them. Of course, commemorating that day every year and continuing to remember them and discussing the background of that failed coup attempt is also important contribution to our martyrs and to the victims of that night.
Thank you, Ambassador. Sir Alan, you may not agree with this question or the assumption of it, and that is basically why does Turkey, or why is Turkey prone to so many coups? And what is the UK attitude to veto? Have they condemned it?
Well, I think that it's very difficult. I mean, this is really for historians and very clever political analysts to know why any country might be susceptible to some disruption to its normal form of government. Though I don't feel entirely equipped. I mean, democracies take a long time to bed down and really reach the entire psyche of everybody. So, you know, some countries which are young democracies may be less stable than some that have had them for, you know, hundreds of years. So I don't really know what the answer to that may be, but inevitably there are challenges of ethnicity, sometimes religion, which can disrupt stable government. In terms of condemning, I think we have been very strong to condemn. Again, the inner workings of FETÖ are known far better by Turkish government and agencies than by us. And of course, it is bizarre that someone who is seen to be so threatening to Turkey should be living so safely and comfortably in the United States. So I think there is an issue still there about what he is free to do and may be doing from the comfort of what I think is Pennsylvania. So I'm sure that argument will continue between Turkey and the US. All I can say is I'm very glad he's not in the UK.
Ambassador, would you like to have a quick comment on that? Because sadly we're running out of time.
Thank you. Of course, extraditing the terrorists and the terrorist groups affiliates to Turkey is important, and it is of great importance not only for showing the solidarity and cooperation with Turkey, but also to prevent these kind of terrorist activities everywhere, and also to show the principled approach to these terrorist activities every time, everywhere. Otherwise, the double standard and the hypocritic approaches cannot give any result for any time, anywhere. And also I mean, Turkey-US relationship, as Alan said, it is very, very critical and important for the extradition of Fethullah Gülen to Turkey, and for our relevant authorities, I mean, from the relevant ministries struggled for that. But so far, unfortunately, the American approach was negative. But we should continue our struggle in that. In many countries, Turkey was successful to be able to see the extradition of many Fethullah Gülen affiliates to Turkey. And this is a process. I mean, it is. We are not naive. It's not an easy and quick solution for that. Because of that reason, we are making these kind of panels, conferences, to create some awareness that event, that brutal night was only one day in Turkey. It could happen everywhere, and this awareness is important to understand the importance of frank and principled approach to democracy is important. And because of that reason, also I am hopeful that we will see more extradition of more affiliates of Gülen Group in different countries, including the UK, in the coming days or months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And regrettably, we've run out of time. Our discussion tonight, or our reflections, have given rise to many questions, and I do apologize to those who wrote in questions that we've been unable to address them. I'd like to express our grateful thanks to our speakers, both distinguished and people who are pressed on time, and therefore we need to keep within the hour. But Ambassador, thank you so much for your openness on these reflections, and also Sir Alan for giving us your insights. I think what tonight has reminded us was that brutal night, as the Ambassador described, was an attack on a relatively young but yet well-established and fully functioning democracy. And I think that is a frightening thought, that happened in our European neighborhood just 5 years ago. I think it underlines the need for vigilance and also solidarity, an awareness of the risks and the dangers. So I hope we will take that away with us. The president's words, President Erdogan's words, no power higher than the power of the people, was proved true that evening. I think it was the response of the people that enabled the security forces loyal to the government to gain control in such short a time. And I think that's an important lesson we should keep in mind. I'd finally like to express my thanks to the Centre for British-Turkish Understanding for giving us this opportunity, and hopefully we will have other occasions where we can reflect more deeply and widely and be able to address some of the questions that we were unable to answer this evening. Thank you.